there appears to be a showdown between Donald Trump and the GOP-led Senate Armed Services Committee, okay? They actually held a voice vote in order to rename government buildings that have been named after Confederate soldiers. So the GOP-led Senate Armed Services Committee adopted an amendment to the Defense Authorization Act renewal behind closed doors for the Pentagon to remove the names of Confederate generals from military assets within 3 years, just as Donald Trump vowed to fight any such effort. So the amendment would create an independent commission to review and develop a detailed plan for removing the names. The amendment was adopted by a voice vote. Now, the voice vote is where they all say yay or nay. And that allows them to vote without having to be on the record saying either yay or nay. But it did pass, and the White House is not in favor of this. According to NPR, the White House dug in this week on standing by the current names of a number of Army bases named for Confederate commanders, including Robert E. Lee, who commanded the Confederate Army, Braxton Bragg, and others. And Donald Trump said on Twitter, it has been suggested that we should name as many as 10 of our legendary military bases, such as Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Fort Hood in Texas, Fort Benning in Georgia, etc. These monumental and very powerful bases have become part of a great American heritage. I didn't know that the great American heritage was losing. I guess that's our great American heritage, Cenk, loser Confederates.
Yeah, actually, the original version of that quote, I don't know why that quote didn't have it in there, mentioned how it was a history of winning. He literally said that in that quote, when celebrating the Confederacy would be celebrating, at a minimum, a bunch of losers. So on top of that, we are celebrating our enemies. What a weird thing to do. So I know why conservatives care. There's two reasons. One is just old school racism. Like, some folks in the South, and even some folks that aren't in the South, they're like, oh, Confederate generals, very brave, good tacticians. Even about Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was the original Grand Wizard of the KKK and who was a general in the Confederacy, they put up a lot of statues of him. Gee, I wonder why they picked him to put up a lot of statues of. And people will say, no, he was also the Wizard of the Saddle. No, we're not celebrating his horseback riding skills. They were, and by the way, they weren't even put up right after the Civil War to say, hey, these are our ancestors, these are our heritage, etc. They were put up during the Civil Rights era to celebrate racist generals and that history of killing African Americans and suppressing them. Okay, so understand the history of it. So, but there is a second part of the reason why Republicans like those bases, want to keep those names, and Trump does get that, which is conservatives by their nature value tradition and things the way they were. Progressives want to change things, want to fight for positive change. Conservatives, by definition, do not want things to change. So when they hear that anything's going to change, it bothers them. Like, they're like, Fort Bragg's legendary. I know Fort Bragg. Or maybe they were proud to have, served at Fort Bragg or Fort Hood. And they don't want anything to change. And change really bothers them. So that's part of what Trump is going for here in appealing to those guys. But it doesn't make it any less absurd. The Confederacy killed more American soldiers than any other enemy we have ever had by an order of magnitude. And so it'd be like having Camp Bin Laden and Camp Goebbels. But like, quite literally, Goebbels didn't kill as many Americans. Bin Laden didn't kill as many Americans. The only reason why they view it differently is like, well, yeah, I know, dude, but those are, our ancestors who killed Americans. So that's okay. It's not Arab ancestors, it's not German ancestors. It's our ancestors that committed treason against America and killed all those American soldiers. No, not good enough. You got to take those names off.
Do you remember this? I don't want to blame the wrong Republican politician, so I'm not going to say the name unless you remember who it was. There was some Republican politician who had a ranch that was named N-word head, and the N-word part was actually like spelled out. Who was that? Do you remember?
Rick Perry.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, how do you not change the name of, I mean, there are things that are around the edges. That is not anywhere near an edge. And a bunch of Republican politicians and donors would go to N-word head ranch and celebrate it and say, we're going there. It's the full word written out. And they're like, no, that's just tradition. And so that's okay. Yeah, what tradition is it? So, and finally, I can't let this slide without mentioning what the Confederacy was about. Because now, all of you know it, but we still have insane right-wingers, including the people in power, who say they won't change it like Donald Trump, because the Confederacy didn't stand for slavery. It stood for other things. They never named them. States' rights. States' rights to do what? Keep slaves. What else you got? Nothing, right? So I want to read you the Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, his cornerstone speech. He said this is the cornerstone of why they built the Confederacy. Here's a direct quote. He said, our new government's foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. They thought that they had to start the Confederacy for the moral truth, to fight for the morality of keeping slaves and showing that black people were the inferior race. So don't pretend that the Confederacy was about anything else. I don't want to celebrate any of those guys under any condition. I hope we never have to mention their names again. And to have them on our American military bases is a betrayal of the memory of the American soldiers that were lost in that war.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.